My family made me babysit every holiday BC. I don't have kids, so it doesn't matter. But when I lost my apartment, nobody wanted to give me a place to crash. For a week later, they dropped their kids at my new place, so I gave them a reality check. I need to start by saying I love my nieces and nephews. This isn't about them. This is about the years of being treated like a second-ass family member. Because I chose not to have children, and how that backfired spectacularly on everyone who made me feel less than. My name is Rachel, and I'm 34 years old. I work as a freelance graphic designer, which means my income fluctuates, but generally keeps me comfortable. I have 3 siblings, my older sister Amanda, who has 3 kids, my brother Derek, who has 2, and my younger sister Jenna, who has 1. My parents Carol and Robert live about 20 minutes from most of us in suburban Connecticut. The babysitting started innocuously enough about 8 years ago. Amanda had just had her first child, and she asked if I could watch little Madison for a couple hours during Thanksgiving while she helped Mom cook. Sure, no problem. Madison was adorable, and I was happy to help my sister. What I didn't realize was that I just set a precedent that would consume the next 8 years of my life. The next holiday was Christmas. Amanda had Madison, who was now a toddler, and Derek's wife, Lisa, was pregnant with her first. Mom called me 3 days before Christmas Eve and asked what I was bringing. When I said I'd made plans to bring a dessert and a side dish, she interrupted me. Actually, honey, we were hoping you could come early and watch Madison while everyone helps with dinner prep. I hesitated. How early? Maybe around noon. Dinner's at 6 o'clock, so that gives us plenty of time. 6 hours of babysitting on Christmas Eve. I opened my mouth to protest, but she'd already moved on to discussing the menu. I showed up at noon. I left at 8, after also helping clean up, while everyone else retired to the living room because they were so exhausted from wrangling their kids all day. I'd been wrangling Madison all day, but apparently that didn't count. Easter came next, then Thanksgiving again, then someone's birthday party, then another holiday. Each time I was expected to be the default child care, the requests became less like requests and more like assumptions. Nobody asked if I was available anymore. They just told me what time to arrive to start my shift. The worst part wasn't even the babysitting itself. It was the way they talked about it about me. Rachel doesn't have kids, so she doesn't understand how exhausting it is. Well, Rachel has more free time than the rest of us. Rachel can stay late to clean up since she doesn't have to rush home to put anyone to bed. It doesn't really matter if Rachel misses the dinner conversation. She doesn't have kids' stories to share anyway. That last one came from Derek during a particularly brutal Easter 3 years ago. I'd spent 4 hours in the playroom with 5 kids under the age of 7 while everyone else ate, drank wine, and caught up in the dining room. When I finally emerged with a splitting headache and asked if there was any ham left, Derek made that comment. Everyone laughed. My dad actually laughed. I stood there with grape juice stained on my favorite shirt, my hair stuck to my forehead with sweat from breaking up multiple toy-related altercations, and my own brother told me my presence at family dinner didn't matter because I didn't have offspring to brag about. I started making excuses after that. I was busy, I had work deadlines, I wasn't feeling well. Sometimes it worked. Usually it didn't. Come on, Rachel. Family is important. Amanda would guilt me. We never see you anymore, Jenna would add. Your nieces and nephews are growing up without knowing their aunt. Mom would deliver the killing blow. So I'd cave every single time. I'd show up, get handed 3 or 4 children, and spend the entire holiday in a separate room while everyone else enjoyed themselves. I started to dread family gatherings. I'd feel sick for days before them, but I kept going because they were my family, and family is what you do, right? The financial crash happened last year in September. I'd been doing well. Better than well, actually. I'd landed 3 major corporate clients, and my income had jumped significantly. I'd moved into a nicer apartment in Stamford, 1 bedroom with high ceilings and actual closet space. I was proud of myself. I'd done all this without a partner, without kids, just me and my skills. Then one of my major clients declared bankruptcy. Another got acquired, and my contract was terminated. The third decided to move their design work in-house. In the span of 6 weeks, I lost 70% of my income. I tried everything. I picked up small gigs here and there. I applied for part-time positions. I ate through my savings trying to make rent while hustling for new clients. By November, I knew I was in trouble. By mid-December, my landlord informed me he was selling the building and I had to be out by January 1st. He was within his legal rights. The new owners wanted to renovate. I was going to be homeless in 2 weeks, right after Christmas. I called Amanda first. She was my oldest sister, the one who used to braid my hair when we were kids. I explained the situation as calmly as I could. I told her I had promising leads on new clients and apartments, but I needed maybe a week or two to get everything sorted. Could I stay in her guest room? Oh, Rachel, I wish I could help, but we've got Amanda's parents coming to stay for New Year's. The guest room is taken. Her in-laws were coming for 3 days. I needed the room before and after those dates. I pointed this out. It's just really not a good time. The kids have been sick and the house is chaotic. You understand? I called Derek next. He had a finished basement with a pull-out couch. I'd slept on it before during a blizzard. Man, Lisa's been using that space for her yoga studio. All her equipment is down there. All her equipment is down there. There's barely room to walk, let alone sleep. Could the equipment be moved for a week? It's really expensive equipment, Rachel. I don't want it getting damaged or misplaced. I tried Jenna, my baby sister. She had a one-bedroom apartment, but a long couch. I'm in such a tiny space already, and with Tyler's toys everywhere, I just don't think it would work. Plus, you know how light of a sleeper I am. It would be so awkward. I called my parents last. Surely they would help. Honey, we've already committed to watching Madison and Tyler for a week in January, while Amanda and Derek go on a couple's retreat. We'll have our hands full. Having you here, too, would just be too much stress. Let me repeat that. My parents, who have a 4-bedroom house, refused to let me stay because they'd be watching 2 grandchildren, and adding their adult daughter to the mix was too stressful. I cried for 3 hours after that phone call. Then I dried my eyes and figured it out myself. I moved most of my stuff into a storage unit. I spent a week on my friend Kelly's couch. She's not family, just someone I'd met through a client a few years back, and she opened her home without hesitation. I worked 16-hour days hunting for clients and apartments. I ate ramen and cereal. I showered at the gym, and I found a solution. By mid-January, I'd signed a lease on a smaller apartment in Norwalk. It wasn't as nice as my old place, but it was mine. I'd also landed 2 new clients with retainer agreements. I was going to be okay. I did it completely alone, without a single member of my family offering anything except excuses. The kicker, I still showed up for Christmas. I still babysat all 5 kids while everyone else enjoyed dinner. Nobody asked how my apartment hunt was going. Nobody seemed to remember I was in crisis mode. When I mentioned I'd found a new place, Amanda said, "Oh, good. Glad that worked out," and immediately changed the subject to Madison's performance in the school play. I decided something during that Christmas dinner as I sat in the playroom with a sleeping toddler on my lap and the distant sound of my family laughing without me. I was done being their free childcare. I was done being treated like my life mattered less because I didn't have children. The revenge, if you want to call it that, came naturally. I didn't plan it. I didn't scheme. I just stopped saying yes. February brought someone's birthday party. Amanda called. "Hey, can you watch the kids during dinner? We're doing that new hibachi place, and kids aren't really welcome." "No, I can't make it. I have plans." "Silence, then." "What plans?" "Just plans. Have fun at dinner." I hung up. My hands were shaking. It felt terrifying and exhilarating. March was Easter. Mom called, with the time to arrive for kid duty. I told her I'd be coming at 5 o'clock for dinner, same as everyone else, and I wouldn't be available for childcare. But who's going to watch the kids while we cook? I guess the parents will figure it out. "See you at 5. I arrived at 5. There was chaos. Madison was crying because nobody had played with her. Derek looked frazzled because he'd been chasing his kids around while trying to help cook. Amanda snapped at me the second I walked in. "Thanks for showing up on time. Would have been nice to have help earlier." I told Mom I wasn't available for childcare today. "I'm here as a guest for dinner." Her mouth fell open. Jenna stared at me like I'd grown a second head. The dinner itself was uncomfortable in a way family dinners had never been before. I sat at the actual dining table, wedged between my father and Jenna, while everyone processed my newfound refusal to be the designated babysitter. Derek's youngest kept trying to climb on his lap during the meal, and I watched him struggle to cut his ham one-handed while bouncing a whining toddler. Amanda's middle child spilled an entire glass of juice across the tablecloth, and she had to jump up to clean it while her food got cold. My mother kept shooting me pointed looks like I was supposed to leap up and offer assistance. I didn't. I ate my dinner slowly, savoring every bite, participating in adult conversation for the first time in years at a family gathering. My father asked about my new apartment, and I told him about the neighborhood, the coffee shop on the corner, the park where I'd started jogging in the mornings. Normal things. Things that had nothing to do with children or babysitting or being useful. "Sounds like you're really settling in," he said. And there was something in his tone I couldn't quite read. Pride, maybe? Or was that wishful thinking? Jenna barely spoke to me. She kept glancing between me and Amanda, clearly uncomfortable with attention crackling through the room like static electricity. When her son Tyler started fussing, she excused herself to take him to another room. And I knew it was partly an escape from the awkwardness I created. After dinner, everyone moved to the living room. Normally, this was when I'd be corralling kids for a movie or games, while the adults had coffee and dessert. Instead, I followed them into the living room and sat down on the couch. Amanda looked at me with wide eyes, 3 children orbiting around her like moons around the planet. "Madison, honey, please don't jump on Grandma's furniture," she said, her voice tight with stress. Madison ignored her and continued bouncing on the armchair. Derek's son was pulling books off the shelf. Tyler was crying somewhere in the distance. The scene was pandemonium, and for once, I was just an observer. My mother appeared in the doorway with coffee. Her eyes swept over the chaos, landed on me, sitting calmly on the couch, and I saw something harden in her expression. She set the coffee tray down with more force than necessary. "Rachel, could you help me in the kitchen for a moment?" It wasn't a request. I followed her into the kitchen, where she rounded on me immediately. "What exactly are you trying to prove here?" she demanded, her voice low and angry. "I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm just being a guest at a family dinner like everyone else." "That's not how this family works, and you know it. We all pitch in. We all help with the children." "Really?" I crossed my arms. "Because I seem to remember being the only one pitching in for the last 8 years. When's the last time you saw Derek watch Amanda's kids during a holiday? When has Amanda ever spent an entire dinner in a separate room with Jenna's child? That's different. Stop saying that." My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. "It's not different. The only difference is that I don't have kids, so everyone decided my time was less valuable, my presence was less important. Well, I'm done accepting that." She stared at me for a long moment, her jaw working like she was chewing on words she didn't want to say. Finally, she shook her head. "You're being selfish, Rachel. Your sister needs help." "Then maybe her husband should help her. Or maybe you should. Or maybe we could all acknowledge that if you have children, they're your responsibility, not mine." I walked back into the living room, gathered my purse and coat, and announced I was leaving. Amanda looked relieved. Derek looked vindicated, like I'd just proven whatever point he'd been making about me. Jenna still wouldn't meet my eyes. My father walked me to the door. "Drive safe, honey," he said quietly. There was something apologetic in his tone, but he didn't say anything else. He didn't defend me to Mom. He didn't acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, I had a point. He just told me to drive safe and close the door behind me. I sat in my car in their driveway for 5 minutes before I could trust myself to drive. My hands were shaking with adrenaline and anger and something that felt dangerously close to grief. I'd just broken a pattern that had defined nearly a decade of family relationships, and I had no idea what came next. We had a tense meal. I left right after eating. Nobody tried to stop me. Nobody asked me to stay and clean. April came and went. I didn't offer to babysit. I didn't get asked either. The family group chat got quieter when it came to event planning. I noticed I wasn't being tagged in conversations about who could watch which kids when. During this period, something else happened that I hadn't expected. I started building a life that didn't revolve around my family's needs. Without the constant obligation of holiday babysitting looming over me, I had time, actual free time on weekends and evenings. Time I'd forgotten I was entitled to. I started saying yes to invitations I'd previously declined. Kelly invited me to a pottery class, something I'd always wanted to try, but never had the time for. I made a bowl that looked more like a drunk ashtray, but I had fun doing it. I met 2 other women there, Sarah and Michelle, and we started getting coffee after class. Work picked up too. One of my new clients referred me to their sister company, and suddenly I had a steady stream of projects. I was making more money than I had in months, and the quality of my work improved because I wasn't constantly exhausted from unpaid child air labor. I could focus. I could be creative without the background stress of knowing I'd have to spend my next weekend in a playroom breaking up fights over toy trucks. I started going to a yoga class on Sunday mornings. Sunday had always been the day when family obligations hit hardest. Someone's birthday brunch, a casual gathering that turned into 6 hours of babysitting, impromptu dinners where I was expected to entertain children. Now, Sundays were mine. I'd wake up slowly, make coffee, go to yoga, and then spend the afternoon however I wanted. Sometimes I worked, sometimes I read, sometimes I did absolutely nothing, and it felt like luxury. The guilt came in waves. I'd be enjoying myself, laughing at something Michelle said, or feeling proud of a design I completed. And then I'd think about Madison asking where I was, or my mom's disappointed face, and the guilt would crash over me. Was I being selfish? Was I punishing my nieces and nephews for their parents' behavior? Was I throwing away my family over something I should just let go? But then I'd remember standing in that playroom on Christmas, invisible and unappreciated, and the guilt would transform back into anger. I'd remember calling Amanda from my car, my voice shaking, as I explained I was about to lose my apartment, and hearing her make up excuses. I'd remember Derek's casual dismissal of my presence mattering at family dinners. The guilt would evaporate, replaced by the solid certainty that I was doing the right thing. I went on a date in late April. His name was Marcus, an accountant I'd met through a networking event. We got dinner at a small Italian place, and when he asked about my family, I found myself telling him everything. The years of babysitting, the homelessness crisis they'd ignored, the boundaries I was finally setting. I half expected him to think I was bitter or difficult. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and said, "Good for you." My sister pulled something similar with my mom. Everyone expected Mom to drop everything to watch my sister's kids because she was retired. Like retirement meant she existed solely to provide free childcare. Finally, Mom started saying no, and my sister lost her mind. But Mom's happier now. She volunteers at the library, takes art classes, has her own life. Your family will adjust. Would they, though? I wasn't sure. The group chat had gone from dozens of messages a day to maybe 1 or 2 a week. Nobody was reaching out to me individually. I was being frozen out, and I knew it. Part of me wanted to cave, to send an apologetic message and restore peace. The larger part of me refused to apologize for having boundaries. Then came May. I had been in my new apartment for 4 months. I was settling in. I bought real furniture instead of living out of boxes. I painted an accent wall. I was rebuilding my life piece by piece, and it felt good. Hard, but good. On a Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door to find Amanda and Derek standing there with all 5 kids and several bags. I'd been having a good morning up until that point. I'd slept in until 9 o'clock, made pancakes with blueberries, and was planning to spend the day working on a logo design for a boutique hotel. My laptop was open on the coffee table. My second cup of coffee was still warm, and I was wearing pajama pants and an old college sweatshirt. I was comfortable. I was content. I was in my own space, living my own life. And then my doorbell rang. When I opened the door and saw them standing there, Amanda, with her overstuffed diaper bag and fake bright smile, Derek with his impatient expression, and Madison holding his hand. The other kids clustered around them like they were waiting to board a bus. My stomach dropped. I knew what was happening before anyone said a word. "Hey," Amanda said brightly, pushing past me with Madison and her younger 2 in tow. "Thanks so much for doing this. We completely forgot we had this wedding in Boston, and we couldn't find a sitter." Derek followed with his 2 kids. "We'll be back tomorrow afternoon. There's snacks in the bag and extra clothes. You're a lifesaver." They were in my apartment depositing children and supplies, acting like this was completely normal, like they hadn't refused to let me sleep on their couches 4 months ago when I was nearly homeless, like they hadn't left me to fend for myself during the hardest period of my adult life. "Stop," I said. My voice came out harder than I expected. "What are you doing?" Amanda laughed. "Dropping off the kids like we said. We have a wedding." "You didn't ask me if I could watch them." "Well, no, But you're not busy, right? It's just for one night. Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the assumption. Maybe it was the phrase, "you're not busy," when I'd spent months clawing my way back to stability. Maybe it was the sheer audacity of showing up at the apartment I'd had to find alone and demanding I watch 5 kids overnight. "Get out," I said. Silence fell over my living room. 5 children stared at me with wide eyes. Derek laughed nervously. "Come on, Rachel, don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic. Get your children and leave my apartment right now." Amanda's face went red. "Are you serious? We have a wedding. We're already late." "Then you should have arranged childcare in advance by actually asking me instead of assuming I'd be available. I am not watching your kids." "What is your problem?" Derek stepped toward me, his voice rising. "We're family. You help family." The words poured out of me like poison I'd been holding in for years. Family? Where was family when I lost my apartment in December? When I called every single one of you and got nothing but excuses? Where was family when I needed somewhere to stay for 1 week and not one of you could spare a guest room or a couch? Amanda, your in-laws weren't even there yet. Derek, yoga equipment is more important than your sister? And both of you have the nerve to show up here at the apartment I found by myself after you abandoned me and just dump your kids without even asking? The energy in the room shifted. Madison started crying quietly, picking up on the tension. Derek's oldest son tugged on his father's sleeve, confused. Amanda's face had gone from red to pale, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to speak but couldn't find words. "That was different," Amanda finally managed. "Different how? Because I don't have kids, so it doesn't matter? Because my problems aren't real problems? I have spent 8 years being your free babysitter at every holiday and event. I have missed family dinners, conversations, memories, all so I could watch your children while you enjoyed yourselves. I have been made to feel like my presence doesn't matter because I don't have offspring to discuss. And the one time I needed help, actual help, every single one of you told me no." I thought back to those phone calls in December, sitting in my car in a grocery store parking lot because I couldn't bear to make them from inside my apartment that I was about to lose. The way my voice had cracked when I explained to Amanda that I just needed a week, maybe 2. The long pause before she fed me that lie about her in-laws. The casual way Derek had dismissed me, like moving expensive yoga equipment was a bigger inconvenience than his sister being homeless. The way my own mother had told me that having me in the house while they watched grandchildren would be too stressful, like I was somehow more difficult than 2 small children. I'd sat in that parking lot after the last call and watched families loading groceries into their cars, going about their normal lives while mine fell apart. I felt so alone, so disposable. And now they were standing in my living room, the home I'd fought to secure without any of them, expecting me to just smile and accept their children like nothing had happened. Derek tried to interrupt. "We didn't. You did. You all did. And now you show up here expecting me to take 5 kids overnight like I owe you something. I don't owe you anything. I've paid my dues. I've been the good aunt, the helpful sister. I'm done." "So you're going to make us miss a wedding?" Amanda's voice had gone shrill. "Do you know how expensive these tickets were? Call Mom and Dad. They're watching kids in January for your couple's retreat, right? They must love babysitting. Or maybe ask your neighbors. Ask your friends. Hire a sitter. I don't care what you do, but you're not leaving these kids here." Madison started crying. The sound broke my heart, but I didn't back down. This wasn't about the kids. This was about years of being disrespected and undervalued. Derek pulled out his phone. "This is insane. I'm calling Mom." "Go ahead." He did. I could hear my mother's voice through the speaker, high and panicked. Derek explained the situation in the most biased way possible, making me sound like a monster. Then he handed me the phone. "Rachel Marie, what has gotten into you?" Mom's voice was sharp. "They need your help." "They didn't ask for my help. They assumed it. There's a difference. This is not the time to be petty about something that happened months ago." "Petty?" I felt my control slipping. "You refused to let me stay with you because having me in your house while you babysat was too stressful. But somehow it's not petty for them to leave 5 kids with me overnight without even asking? That's completely different. You're an adult who can take care of yourself. These are children who need supervision. So find someone to supervise them. Goodbye, Mom." I hung up and handed the phone back to Derek. "You have 5 minutes to get everyone out of my apartment. or I'm calling the police and reporting abandoned children." "You wouldn't," Amanda whispered. "Try me." It took 15 minutes of scrambling, phone calls, and the kids crying, but they loaded everyone back up. Amanda was crying too now, yelling about how I was selfish and cruel. Derek called me names I won't repeat. They slammed my door hard enough to rattle the frame. I stood in my quiet apartment, surrounded by the bags and snacks they'd forgotten in their rush to leave, and I felt the weight of 8 years lift off my shoulders. The family group chat exploded within an hour. Messages flew back and forth. I was called every name in the book: selfish, heartless, cruel, vindictive. My mother said I should be ashamed. Jenna, who'd barely been involved, said I'd gone too far. My father, who usually stayed out of conflicts, sent me a private message saying he was disappointed in me. I read through every message, watching my phone buzz with notification after notification. My hands were shaking, but not from fear or regret, from rage. Pure, crystalline rage at the audacity of these people who had abandoned me in my time of need, now painting me as the villain for refusing to be their doormat. Derek sent a paragraph-long message detailing how I traumatized his children by yelling at them. I hadn't yelled at the kids. I'd yelled at him and Amanda, but facts didn't seem to matter in this narrative they were constructing, where I was the monster. Amanda sent a voice message. I almost didn't listen to it, but curiosity won. Her voice was teary and dramatic. "I can't believe you'd do this to us, Rachel. We've always been there for you, and this is how you repay us. You made Madison cry. She doesn't understand why Aunt Rachel doesn't love her anymore. How am I supposed to explain this to my daughter?" That one hit different. The idea that Madison thought I didn't love her made my chest ache. But I had to remind myself that this wasn't about Madison. This was about Amanda using her daughter's feelings as a weapon, trying to guilt me into backing down. If Amanda really cared about Madison's relationship with me, she wouldn't have spent 8 years treating me like hired help. Jenna's message was shorter, but somehow worse. "Mom's crying. Are you happy now? You've torn this family apart over babysitting." Over babysitting. Like that was all it was. Like it wasn't about years of disrespect, of being treated as less than, of having my time and presence devalued at every turn. Like it wasn't about them refusing to help me when I faced homelessness, but expecting me to drop everything for them. My mother's message was the longest and the most manipulative. She invoked family values, tradition, the importance of supporting each other. She talked about how I used to be such a sweet girl, always willing to help, and she didn't know what had happened to me. She said my behavior was unchristian and that I needed to search my heart and apologize to my siblings. The irony of my mother lecturing me about supporting each other when she'd refused me a room in her 4-bedroom house wasn't lost on me. I turned off notifications and went about my day. I cleaned my apartment. I worked on a design project. I ordered Thai food and watched a movie. I slept better that night than I had in months. The next morning, I sent one message to the group chat. For 8 years, I have been treated as free childcare at every family event because I don't have children. I have been told repeatedly that my time matters less, my presence matters less, my life matters less. When I faced homelessness and called each of you for help, I got nothing but excuses. You made it clear that I can't count on this family when I need support, but you still expected to count on me yesterday without even the courtesy of asking first. I'm not doing this anymore. I love my nieces and nephews, and I will always be their aunt, but I will not be the default babysitter. I will not be taken for granted, and I will not be guilt-tripped for having boundaries. If you want to repair our relationship, it starts with an apology, an actual change in how you treat me. Until then, don't contact me unless it's an emergency. I left the group chat. I blocked the inevitable barrage of angry responses on my personal number. I focused on my work and my friends, the ones who'd actually shown up when I needed them. 2 weeks went by. Kelly took me out for margaritas to celebrate my spine, as she called it. My colleague James sent me a congratulations gift when I told him what happened. These people who weren't related to me by blood celebrated me standing up for myself. My actual family was silent. Then I got a knock on my door. It was Amanda, alone. She looked terrible. Her eyes were puffy, her hair was in a messy ponytail, and she was holding a coffee like it was a lifeline. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. I almost said no, but curiosity won out. I let her in. We sat at my small kitchen table. She stared at her coffee for a long moment before speaking. I'm sorry. 2 words I'd been waiting 8 years to hear. I've been thinking about what you said. Actually, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. And you're right, about all of it. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. We did abandon you. I abandoned you. When you called me about needing a place to stay, I made up that excuse about my in-laws because the truth was, I just didn't want to deal with it. You've always been so capable, so independent, and I think I just assumed you'd figure it out. I didn't think about how that made you feel. I didn't say anything. I wanted to hear all of it. And the babysitting thing. God, Rachel, I never realized how much we'd been using you. It just became this habit. You know, you were good with the kids and you never complained, so we just kept doing it. We made you miss so much, and we justified it by telling ourselves you didn't mind because you didn't have kids of your own. She wiped her eyes. That's such an awful thing to admit, but it's true. Your life matters just as much as mine. Your time matters just as much. Why are you here? I asked. Did Mom send you? No, Mom's still furious at you. Actually, she thinks you were completely out of line. Amanda laughed bitterly. I got into a huge fight with her about it. Told her she was wrong, that we all were. Derek thinks I'm being too soft, but I don't care what they think. I needed to come here and tell you I'm sorry, really, truly sorry, not because I want you to babysit again, but because I hurt my sister and I need to make it right. We talked for 2 hours. She told me about the wedding, how they had to miss it because they couldn't find childcare in time. She told me about the fights in the family since then, how everyone was choosing sides. She told me she'd been doing some serious thinking about how she treats people and how she wants Madison to grow up seeing women support each other, not tear each other down. I told her about the months after I lost my apartment, how Kelly had opened her home without question, how I'd felt so alone even though I was surrounded by family, how every holiday had become something I dreaded instead of enjoyed, how her comment about my presence not mattering at Easter had stuck with me for years. I said that? She asked, looking horrified. Derek said it. You all laughed. She put her head in her hands. I don't even remember, but that makes it worse. You remember it perfectly because it hurt you. And I don't remember because I didn't care enough to notice I was hurting you. It wasn't a fix-all conversation. One apology doesn't erase 8 years of pain, but it was a start. Derek never apologized. He still thinks I overreacted and ruined their plans out of spite. We barely speak now. Jenna apologized via text, a short message that felt obligatory. We're cordial but distant. My parents took 6 months to come around. My father reached out first, admitting they'd been wrong to refuse me housing. My mother took longer. She still thinks I should have just watched the kids that day and addressed the issues later, but she's trying in her own way. The family dynamics have shifted permanently. I'm no longer expected to provide free childcare. Sometimes I offer to watch the kids for a few hours, on my terms, when I want to spend time with them. Amanda respects my boundaries now. We meet for coffee sometimes, just the two of us, rebuilding our relationship. Last Thanksgiving was different. I arrived at dinner time, not hours early. I sat at the table with all the adults. I participated in conversations. I held my nephew Tyler for a bit because I wanted to, not because it was expected. When Amanda looked stressed managing all 3 of her kids during dessert, I offered to take them outside for a bit. She looked at me with surprise. Are you sure? I'm offering, aren't I? We spent 30 minutes in my parents' backyard. Madison told me about her dance classes. I pushed the younger 2 on the swing set. When we came back inside, Amanda hugged me and whispered, "Thank you," like she meant it. It's not perfect. Derek still makes passive-aggressive comments sometimes about how I'm not a team player. My mom still occasionally suggests I should be more flexible with family obligations. But I stand my ground now. I've learned that being family doesn't mean accepting poor treatment. It means expecting better and demanding respect. The irony isn't lost on me. For 8 years, I was told my life mattered less because I didn't have children. The moment I needed help, that same family couldn't spare a week for me. But when they needed something, they still expected me to drop everything. Setting boundaries didn't destroy my family. It just revealed who was willing to respect me and who wasn't. Amanda stepped up. My parents eventually came around. Derek and Jenna chose their comfort over our relationship, at least for now. Maybe that'll change. Maybe it won't. I'm okay with either outcome because I finally learned something crucial. I don't need to set myself on fire to keep others warm. I don't need to sacrifice my presence, my time, or my dignity. to prove I'm valuable to my family. And I definitely don't need to accept being treated as less than just because my life choices don't include children. The new apartment is working out well. I've made it truly mine now, with art on the walls and plants on the windowsills. My client list has grown. I'm financially stable again, stronger for having weathered the storm alone. Kelly and I have dinner every couple of weeks. I joined a book club. I started rock climbing at a local gym. My life is full without children, and full without being everyone's default babysitter. It's full because I filled it with people who value me, activities I enjoy, and relationships built on mutual respect rather than obligation and guilt. Sometimes Madison asks why she doesn't see me as much as she used to. Amanda handles it well, explaining that Aunt Rachel has her own life, and when we do spend time together, it's because we want to, which makes it more special. I think that's a good lesson for her to learn early, that women's lives have value beyond their utility to others. Do I regret how it went down? The drama, the confrontation, the burned bridges? No, not even a little bit. Because that moment, standing in my apartment doorway and refusing to be taken advantage of, was the moment I finally put myself first. It was the moment I said, my life matters, my boundaries matter, I matter. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat.